Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is a one-on-one interview. We are joined once again as the transfer window runs on by Dharmesh Sheth of Sky Sports News. We've got you here again. This week is the week where something is going to happen for Manchester United. I'm absolutely sure of it. And I'm sure you're here to allay any fears we have that United are going to go through another transfer window with underwhelming transfers. Dharmesh, how are you doing?
How are you? I'm very well, mate. I don't know whether your wishes are going to come true just now. We've been doing this once a week and we keep saying, yeah, next week something will happen. Next week something will happen. But it just seems, it's not just United, in fairness. It's everyone. So let's see.
Well, let's get into it then, because there's still, strangely, there's a lot of talk about the summer and this excitement with INEOS coming in. And yet, at the same time, short-term wise, we're not really seeing a lot of things build. So last week we spoke about Choupo-Moting. I think the week before that we spoke about Timo Werner, the latter of which played against Man United on Sunday for Tottenham. So that one ain't happening. What are the updates on that sort of striking position, which seems to be an area United are willing to look at even in this January transfer window?
As I've said before, this seems to be the market that Manchester United will be looking at. That's if they go into the market at all. There's no guarantee Manchester United are going to sign anyone in this window. One crumb of comfort, if Manchester United fans are looking for the club to make signings, is the last January transfer window. They had Marcel Sabitzer coming in on the last day of the window, so there is a deadline day signing there. And then in the summer window, they had 3 signings come in Sergio Reguilon, Sofian Amrabat and Altay Bayindir. Only one of those was, with a transfer fee of around £5 million in the goalkeeper, Bayindir, whereas the other 2 were loan moves. So that's probably the market that they're going to be looking at. But as I said at the start, this is an issue, not just with Manchester United, this is with every club. This is bearing no comparison to last January's transfer window. There was £800 million spent in last January's transfer window, but it was predominantly from Chelsea. They represented almost half of the transfer spend in the Premier League. They're not doing anything close to that. And you've got to bear in mind as well what happened yesterday, in that Nottingham Forest and Everton have both been charged for breaching profitability and sustainability rules. Now, everyone would say, oh, this is just an excuse for all these clubs not to spend money. You can tell that it is definitely not that, because it is a thing. It is an issue. Manchester United are one of the 18 clubs who have been operating within the profitability and sustainability rules. And hence why these clubs tend to go into the summer transfer window when they do the bulk of their business, because that's when the new budget and accounting year starts again. So if they can keep their powder dry in January, especially in a position now that United find themselves in, I mean, you're watching them week in, week out, Joe. Are you still retaining hope that there's a top 4 finish for Manchester United? Because it seems not only the points difference, but also the teams that they'd have to catch would make it look very, very unlikely, unless there's a big change in the form of the clubs who are up there at the moment, and a big from United who are well off the pace.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like we need to hope Villa crumble. We also then, even if that happens, we still need to catch either Tottenham or Arsenal. And obviously that's going to be difficult. We almost need, here's what we need. We need Man City and Arsenal to get to one of them to get to the Champions League final and lose. The other one to get to the semi-final and lose. We need West Ham to get all the way to the Europa League final and lose, so that the coefficient is high enough that 5th place will get us Champions League. But because of how bad we were in the Champions League, 5th place might not be enough, and it's our own fault.
But imagine it does go to the top 5 and United don't make the top 5, because there's no guarantee for that either. It's not just the top 4 that are peeling away from United. The 5th place club as well is well clear of Manchester United. So that might be something else that the recruitment team, INEOS, will think about. Is it worth going into the market knowing that probably, as it stands, they're not going to get a top 4 or Champions League finish? Or do they try everything they can to try and do that? And does that mean that they go into the loan market? And of course, that would represent low risk still. Choupo-Moting is still a name that's been flying around from Bayern Munich. I think he is available. He's only got 6 months left on his contract. United, behind the scenes, will probably just be looking at him and other strikers in that position, because that seems to be the area where United are focusing their attentions on. One consolation that you could say I know it was roundly accepted that Tottenham were the better team on Sunday at Old Trafford, but the 2 goals United scored, you suddenly saw, glimpses of 2022, 2023 Marcus Rashford. And, once Rasmus Højlund got his goal against Aston Villa, back in Premier League action again, he's got another goal in the Premier League. So I wonder if that's changing the outlook as well. But as we know, INEOS are there. They're going to look at everything. Yeah. They're going to look at the recruitment. They're going to look at sporting director. And that might mean, right, there's nothing worth doing in this window. Let's wait till the summer.
Well, we'll talk about some summer targets in just a minute, but just on Everton, I can't help but feel a little bit bad for him. It's almost like, do you know when you get told off by your mum and your dad for the same thing? And you're like, well, we've already been told off once, you can't ground us again. I do feel a little bit sorry for Everton now getting punished a second time for what I think is...
Yeah, I think there is a bit of sympathy for Everton, but the rules, but those are the rules, because it is a rolling 3-year period. So they got punished for the 3 seasons up to and including 2021, 2022. Then the accounting figures go in for the season 2022, 2023. So the first year of that 3, which they got punished for, that disappears. It's the rolling 3 years, and they are still in breach of these rules. So that's how it would work, even though I think there is a great deal of sympathy about what's happening there just now with Everton.
Yeah, definitely. But less about Everton, more about Man United, because it's us that needs to start, feeling a bit of sympathy with these transfers. Karim Benzema has been mentioned. There's a few people over in Saudi who there's rumours of discontent, whether they want to, come back to Europe. We're seeing Jordan Henderson mentioned. Karim Benzema, another one who's not really hit the ground running there. His numbers haven't been particularly good. United absolutely love, like you mentioned, I know Choupo-Moting's not in the same class as Benzema, but a striker maybe slightly past his best, a Cavani, even a Ronaldo, you could say. Zlatan was another one, 35 when he arrived. It's almost become tradition now for United fans signing a striker in their mid-30s on a short-term contract. Is Karim Benzema an option for United? Do you see him leaving Saudi Arabia?
Right. This issue that the players who are in Saudi Arabia have, it's one thing saying, I want to leave, I'm not enjoying it. And it's another thing, the club saying, okay, you can go. Now, just say, for example, Manchester United try to explore a loan deal for Karim Benzema. Bear in mind, the Saudi Arabians have put a lot of money into Karim Benzema, not least his incredible wages. Now, if they were to do a loan, why would they say to Karim Benzema, yeah, you can go to Manchester United, and you know what? Because Manchester United can't afford your wages, we're going to pay the majority of your wages as well while you're there. It would, to me, from the outset, that would look like they would be losing face in a massive, massive way if they were to allow that to happen. If Manchester United tried to do a permanent deal for Karim Benzema, then, there might be a transfer fee involved, and then you're relying on Karim Benzema taking a huge cut in his wages. It's the same situation that Jordan Henderson finds himself in. It's all well and good saying, okay, it's not for me anymore. But the reality, it would be very, very difficult for a club in the Premier League to be able to do a deal with a player who's playing in Saudi Arabia. If you think about it, it's very interesting, isn't it? If you look at what happened with Jadon Sancho, Premier League is the league with all the money. So when they sorted out the loan deal with Borussia Dortmund said, we can't afford his wages. Don't worry, Manchester United will help you out with those wages. This has gone the other way, because now Saudi Arabia are in the driving seat, and Manchester United or another Premier League club, if they want to bring in a player from Saudi Arabia potentially on loan, they are going to need the Saudi Arabian club to help them out with the wages, which is almost unheard of when you think about Premier League clubs. They don't usually do that sort of thing. It's normally the other way around. But this time they could find themselves in that position. So in short, it looks very unlikely a deal could be struck with Karim Benzema unless the Saudi club was very, very forgiving with Manchester United and with Karim Benzema and just said, look, you can go. We know you're not happy.
I suppose as well, you think you know, and I mean, this is no disrespect to the Saudi league, but at the moment, a lot of those big players are there as a way to almost promote the league, aren't they? To get eyes on the league. And if Karim Benzema's left, you can't do that. It's not the same as Sancho at United. We bought him to try and win trophies. It hasn't worked, and we want to get rid of him. They need Karim Benzema there to draw the crowds, to draw the TV revenue. And if he's gone,
the figurehead. Of course.
Exactly. So that makes a lot of sense. Brian Brobby. I'm not sure the best way to pronounce it, but he's a young striker over in the Netherlands. Has been linked with Manchester United in the summer, was linked with us again in January. He's sort of almost come out and spoken against this, but not quite. Is there a link there? Do you think United keen on him? And is that one that could possibly happen in January?
There's definitely a link there. Erik ten Hag knows the player very, very well. And Broby himself has come out and said that I could have gone to United, or in so many words, but decided against doing that. I think one important factor here is we've got to take into account INEOS again. I know I keep saying it, but we've got to hammer it home. They are going to be overseeing all of the football operations. Are they going to continue with what has been the theme effectively in the last 18 months since Erik ten Hag took over, that there are players that Erik ten Hag knows and has worked with before? That's the reason that they will come to Manchester United. I think they want a different kind of recruitment policy, because I always speak to United fans, especially in the office, and they can't remember a time when, a transfer came out of the blue, which United got for little or next to no money at all. And he wasn't that well known, and then came to United and he was a revelation. I go back to the days of Evra and Vidic, Javier Hernandez.
I was going to say, I think Hernandez might be the last one. I think he actually is the last, because what was that, 2009, 2010, after Vidic and Evra? I think he is the last one. I can't think of the last time United signed a relatively unknown player who went on to be even a moderate success at the club.
Because we always talk about how much money have United spent and how much money have they overspent buying some of these signings. And that wouldn't have happened really if they'd be bringing in players that, hold on, you know what? Not many people know about this. Donny van de Beek, that seemed like a really good deal at the time, £35 million. And they've turned out they potentially lose £25 million on that. So, again,
lost 25 million, and I think he's made about 20 starts as well. It's not like we've lost money, but he did well while he was here. So just looking as a whole then, and we'll get to summer in a minute, because it looks like there's a few more solid plans there, and like you said, more impetus and more encouragement that there could be some big signings. Just in terms of January, like you said, you can't rule it out, but just your opinion and what you know and who you've spoken to. Do you think United are actively trying to sign anyone, and do you think we will sign anyone in January?
This is going to sound like a real cop-out, Joe, but Manchester United have got their eyes open in the market, and it looks like they've got their eyes open in the loan market. And as I said before, the last two transfer windows, they waited until the deadline day to make signings. So you can't rule it out, and it might be one of those situations where let's just bring in someone just to tide us over, increase competition, take the pressure of a couple of players, particularly in the forward positions, until the end of the season, and then we can reassess, because it would kind of represent a low-risk strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a list here of all the players United have signed on deadline day, and I'll be honest, there's very in the last sort of decade or so, you would only say maybe Dimitar Berbatov, and that was more than a decade ago, was a success. It's our record of these last-minute rushed transfer signings is so bad, and yet here we are again. Halfway through the window, we want players, like you said. We've got our eyes open, and it's probably going to be our last week or so if we do happen to get anyone in. Let's move on to the summer a little bit then, because that's where it does seem as though there's some slightly more concrete names. Elise's one from Crystal Palace that seems to have sort of cropped up in the last kind of 2 or 3 weeks, and it's been kind of backed up by reports and sources here and there. He seems to be a longer-term target. Is that something that you're hearing as well? Is that a player that Ten Hag is keen on, or is that a player that INEOS are keen on?
I think what we've got to look at now, we've got to maybe steer away slightly when you hear about players that are linked or there's an interest from Manchester United, and focus more on INEOS and how they want to do the recruitment moving forward. Because as Gary Neville said, this potentially could be a 6-month audition for Eric Ten Hag.
Yeah.
If he doesn't pass that audition, then maybe a situation that INEOS probably didn't think they'd have to address might come to fruition, in that, do they need to change the manager and the coaching staff? They want to look at every area of that club. Of course they do. And it would seem that that kind of signing, if it was to be someone like Michael Elise, would fit with what the new Manchester United, if you like, for want of a better phrase, would want to do, as opposed to, who does the manager like?
Yeah.
I know this is one where with Elise, everyone knows about him, and he's not going to come cheap. There's also talk of, potentially Aaron Wan-Bissaka being part of that deal. We know that Crystal Palace have tried to sign him before, and we know that Manchester United, just to protect the investment, have triggered the 1-year option in Wan-Bissaka's contract. So he's still got 18 months to go. I think his situation, among others, will have to be assessed in the summer, simply because when you're coming down to 12 months left on your contract, it's that time where it's renew or leave, really.
There's also been reports of a sort of a four kind of pronged attack in the transfer market, looking at a striker. Maybe that's a January striker on loan, but I think longer term, someone who can work alongside Rasmus Højlund, a right back, like you said, and maybe that would be facilitated by Wan-Bissaka being part of another deal, a centre back, and a central midfielder as well. Does that seem to be what you're hearing? Do those four sort of areas seem to be the main areas United are looking to strengthen?
Well, if you look at the situation United find themselves in this season, they've had to play fullbacks in their wrong position. We saw it on Sunday. Aaron Wan-Bissaka's playing at left back against Tottenham. Sometimes it's been Diogo Dalot who's played at left back. And then when there's been so many injuries, you've seen Luke Shaw going to the centre of defence. I think those areas will be the ones that United will look at as priority. Simply because if you look at the central defensive situation as well, you've got Johnny Evans, who, look, he's on a short-term contract. He's 35 years old. He's obviously not the long-term answer at United, however well he's done so far this season. I wouldn't be surprised if he was to extend his stay at United, because by all accounts, he is a leader and, on and off the pitch, a big organiser. The Rafael Varane situation is an interesting one, because they haven't triggered that 1-year option, but they haven't ruled out extending his contract. Now, that can go one of two ways. So if he ends up leaving, of course, the central defence is going to be an area that United will want to improve. They've triggered the 1-year option in Victor Lindelof's contract. Is that ahead of extending his contract even further, or maybe a sale in the summer? Harry Maguire, Manchester United, let's not make any mistake about it, Manchester United wanted to sell him in the summer. That didn't happen. So you could make a case that for all of the central defenders, there's an issue with every single one of them just now at United. And maybe that will be the area where United will think, yes, this is an area we do need to strengthen. Lisandro Martinez, by all accounts, has been a success at Manchester United, but he's had 2 bad injuries and he's missed a lot of games. Are they taking that into account as well? The right back area is looking at in the last 2 transfer windows. We know that Benjamin Pavard was a player that they were looking at in the summer before he ended up going to Inter Milan. The central midfield area, of course, it's an area that Manchester United want to strengthen, because what did they do on deadline day? They brought in Sofian Amrabat on loan until the end of the season. And given his performances so far, now he's at the AFCON as well, you would probably guess that that's probably leaning more towards them not exercising that option. Yeah. So they'll need a central midfielder and, of course, the striking position as well, because I think, as I've said here before, the plan was always to have someone with experience playing alongside Højlund. I don't think they envisaged at the start of the window a 20-year-old who'd never played in the league before going straight in and without a pre-season and go on then, Rasmus, away you go. So that's I think you're right. Those 4 areas, among others as well.
We find ourselves in this position again, don't we, where you go, oh yeah, that didn't quite work out, and we didn't get who we wanted there, and this, and it's. I know no club, even Guardiola or Sir Alex Ferguson or managers with real power at clubs for a sustained period, they don't get everyone they want. And the rumours that one of the reasons Sir Alex retired was because he didn't get some of the players he wanted toward the end. But you just think every single transfer window feels like we're getting the second or third choice in every position almost every time. It's such a bizarre situation. Let's move on a little bit then. There's also reports now looking at in the summer that INEOS could provide a substantial kind of boost in terms of the summer transfer budget, whether that be with their own personal money or whether their investment has meant that United can sort of shift things around and have a little bit more money for transfers. Is that the case? Do you know much about that? And do you expect INEOS to sort of come in and set their stall out with a big £200-300 million transfer window in the summer?
I'll say those three letters again. PSR, profitability and sustainability rules. That is going to have a say in what Manchester United will do. It's not as simple as somebody coming in with a 25% minority investment with £1.25 billion and then immediately thinking, right, the manager's going to have so much money to spend now because we've got this new investment. It's not as simple as that, as these rules are in place have shown. So I think they will have one eye on what happens there with regard to operating within those rules and those parameters. But also, it's also going to be a time in the summer where, rather like in January, I know you keep asking me, oh, surely they've got to bring someone in, whereas a lot of the talk seems to be about departures. That could be a theme as well in the summer, because they might need to raise money to be able to buy. They will get some money, of course they will, from this new investment, of course. Is it going to be as easy as 200-300 million pounds being spent with nothing else happening with regard to departures at United? I can't see that happening just because of the way that the rules work.
On the departures front, I'll ask about some specifics in a minute, but you look at how Chelsea in particular, and even Man City over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, look at all of the top teams. They outsell Manchester United, sometimes 2-1, 3-1. I think Chelsea have sold about 700 or 600 million quid's worth of players in the last decade, and United sold about 150. Is that surely is going to be part of INEOS' strategy of capitalising and selling players at the right time? You look at maybe a Jadon Sancho or a Martial as examples where if we'd have sold Martial 2 years ago, you might have got 25-30 million for him. And since then, he's done essentially, not a lot on the pitch for United, and he'll probably go for a third or a quarter of that, and we've been paying his wages. Do you think that is an element? We've seen Hannibal looking like he's gone to Sevilla now. We're seeing Joe Hugill's out on loan, but I know that's not a permanent deal. But do you think we're going to see more sort of a quicker turnover of players under INEOS?
I think you make a great point, but INEOS are still going to inherit the squad that's there. Yeah. So if you look at the squad that is there, when you look at the potential players that could leave and their contract situations, how much money are they going to get? You're looking at, last summer and the summer before, Rafael Varane and Casemiro came into the club to great fanfare, fantastic players, but you knew immediately there's no sell-on value for these players because they're going to be in their 30s if and when they do leave Manchester United. So I think there's going to have to be a little bit of acceptance from the side of INEOS that they probably won't be able to get the money that they want. Squad that's there at the moment. You talk about Jadon Sancho. It's a great case in point because £73 million worth of investment. Yeah, Eric Ten Hag wasn't at the club when that happened. INEOS wasn't at the club when that happened, but it was seen as a fantastic deal only because he was a young player and he was seen as one of European football's, greatest young lights almost. When Manchester United signed him. It hasn't worked out for him at United. Now United find themselves in a position where how much can they raise the market value of Jadon Sancho if, still a big if, they decide to sell him in the summer? It's not going to be 73 million still, is it? Even if he performs fantastically well for Borussia Dortmund, scores every game. Maybe that's a bad example, but even if he performs fantastically well, clubs will know the situation of Jadon Sancho and maybe Manchester United are thinking, we probably don't want him. They might play on that.
Yeah.
So they're not going to get that 73 million back. So yeah, I think it'll be about minimizing losses rather than immediate profits, which, I'm sure they've been casting, envious glances to the likes of Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool to a certain extent as well, and seen how they've managed to sell really, really well as well. I think, with regard to Chelsea, some of their players went on loan and might have performed well, and their value does go up. But also, some of these players are academy players as well. They've come through the ranks, so it represents pure profit. That's Manchester United fans are almost thinking now, oh, actually, I'd rather see these young academy products being given a chance.
Yeah.
And let's see how they get on, because that is part of the, the history of Manchester United. And I think they would want to, really have a nod towards that. So it's a very, very difficult time to come into the club with regard to the January transfer window for Erik ten Hag, because INEOS have come in just at the time when the window is open.
Yep.
And also the PSR, profitability and sustainability rules, and how much of an impact that is going to have in the summer. And will it be a simple case of, here they are, £1.25 billion, here's 300 million pounds on transfers. I think United might have to be a bit more cute than that.
Just talking about the sort of the general structure of transfers and stuff going forward, and obviously it's not just transfers, but with them coming in on the footballing side, recruitment is going to be a huge part of what INEOS sort of do. There was some reports that Ten Hag was reluctant to sort of lose some of his control over Man United's transfers. We've seen almost I think there was Casemiro maybe is pretty much the only one who's had no link to Ten Hag. So even Mason Mount trained with him or played under him at Utrecht or something. There was like bizarre links to everyone, and it's clear that Ten Hag has had a huge role in shaping United's transfer policy over the last 18 months. Have you heard this about him not wanting to sort of give up control? And do you see it being now a sort of INEOS-focused transfer policy with Ten Hag giving his opinion? Or do you think it's still going to be, if they're Dutch or they've played in the Dutch league, United are sort of much more likely to sign them?
Manchester United haven't got a sporting director. They're operating without a sporting director. All of these other successful clubs near the top of the league, doing well in Europe, have got sporting directors. That's the structure that they use. And if Erik ten Hag is unhappy about the potential of relinquishing a degree of control, that's the way it is, because the Glazers own the club. They've sold 25% of the club to INEOS alongside total control of the football operations. Of course, the manager is going to have an input in what happens. But I think this is going to be done more by committee once they've got the structure in place at United. A sporting director or two, a recruitment team, and the manager all working in harmony, as opposed to what it feels like. And we can't, 100% say that that's how it happened. Erik ten Hag just went to John Murtough and Richard Arnold and said, I need this player. I've worked with him. Sign him, however much it costs. Can't work like that. It's unsustainable. So United are behind everyone else. And the fans might have to be patient, because as much as you're asking me these questions, the January transfer window, I think they're in a position now where they need to take a step back, because this has been the cycle that's happened for the last 10 years since Sir Alex Ferguson left. Manager comes in, brings in players, gets sacked. New manager comes in, doesn't like the players, spends another load of money, and then you end up with a mishmash of a squad that United appear to have out when they are trying to assemble this squad and deciding who is going to stay and who is going to go. Because you've got to remember, the sporting director is not only there to recruit managers and players, but also you almost think about it as the identity of the club. And Erik ten Hag might have been brought into United because they liked the identity he would bring to the club. Whereas I'll use Pep Guardiola as an example. Pep Guardiola was wanted by Manchester City long before he got the job. And what did City do? They put everything in place above him. The recruitment team, the sporting director, the technical team. And then he walked into a situation where he was used to, where he was used to working in. Whereas for whatever reason, United haven't managed to do that? Have they, gone against maybe bringing in football people to do footballing roles? And will that change when INEOS get their feet under the table? And maybe the sporting director can then have more of a say in how Manchester United play and the identity of the club. Because I've said it so many times, it is so much easier to get rid of a manager if it's not working than get rid of 10 players on long-term contracts. That's the problem United have had. Martial is a case in point. Whatever United fans think of him, he's got every right. He's been given that new contract. He's signed. He's got every right to stay there and say, I'm going to honour my contract until the summer, and then I'm going to assess all my options. Yeah. And, United fans won't want to hear that, and they might question his motivation. But when United have tried to sell him and they've sent him out on loan, rather like they're doing with Sancho just now, he didn't perform. And his market value would not have gone up when he came back. That's the problem United have got. Then it's going to be a difficult process by the sounds of it. It's not just the case of these guys are coming in and everything is sorted. It's going to take time.
Yeah, I think that the further away you get from the pitch, the longer it takes for those people to have influence. But I think the greater influence they can have over the long term, if you know what I mean. So you bring a new player in, that might win you some games immediately. Look at Bruno Fernandes that January. He came in and he turned things around. A manager might take 12, 18 months to start implementing things. These owners are going to take maybe 12, 18, 24, 36 months before we start seeing, those real changes. So we know it's a
just
long
one
process,
thing, Joe. I don't know whether you listen to Gary Neville's podcast, the one about transfers, very recently with Jill Scott, Jamie Carragher, Ian Wright and Roy Keane. The question that they asked in the transfer special right at the start of it is, who should have the final say in whether a player comes to the club or not? Is it the manager or is it the sporting director? And the panel was completely split. Right. Gary Neville, Roy Keane said sporting director. Jill Scott and Ian Wright said it's got to be the manager. You can't be bringing in a player that the manager doesn't want. Yeah. And Jamie Carragher said it's got to be a mix of both. So I think that's probably the way forward, what Jamie Carragher said, in that they will have a recruitment team and the manager will have an input. Will he have the final say? That's something for them to decide when it comes down to it, when they're actually about to sign a player.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? United, for the last decade, before, obviously, when Sir Alex was there, I know he was the coach and stuff as well, but he wasn't typically the man putting the cones out and pointing where to run on the pitch. He was he almost was the sporting director. He was more than that, of course, but he did a lot of this stuff. So when he leaves, there's this huge gap there that we've replaced with coaches pretty much, and tried to give these coaches this extra control that they're, not equipped to have.
Joe, you make such a great
it's not fair to give them that.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, because that's the problem, if you look back, that United have had, because Sir Alex Ferguson was unique. Yeah. He and David Gill effectively ran that club with regard to recruitment. And I think when the Glazers had to replace Sir Alex Ferguson, it was almost like, right, this is the model we've got to use. So in came David Moyes, and Ed Woodward was overseeing transfers. He hasn't done a transfer before. No. How can that happen at a club like of the magnitude of Manchester United? And now we are, 10 years? Over 10 years since David Moyes was appointed. And we're still talking about this. Do they need a sporting director?
Well, hopefully, we've had, I think, I don't even know if it's opinion, we've had certainly the biggest shift in above manager kind of ongoings at Manchester United in that decade, probably since the Glazers came in. INEOS coming in is the biggest thing we've seen, on that level. So hopefully we will see some changes. Thank you very much, Dharmesh, for coming on. We'll see you again next week. And right, I'm going to say it now. Next week is the one where you go, this guy, that guy, and that guy, they're all coming in on loan. They've all won a Ballon d'Or. Karim Benzema is I'm on about.
Apologies
we're going to get
advance.
up to now the end of the season. No, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for watching at home as well. Get your thoughts in the comments below. All the people United have been linked with in January and the summer. What do you make of those potential transfers? This has been a one-on-one interview with Dharmesh Sheth of Sky Sports News.